Welcome to Washington Today for Monday, April 7th, 2025. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thank you for joining us. Financial markets continued their upheaval today after President Trump doubled down on his tariffs. The S&P 500 was down 0.8% in late trading following another up and down day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 563 points or 1.5%, and the Nasdaq composite was more than 0.5% lower. This comes as a growing number of Republicans are signing on to bills that would give Congress more power over tariffs. Nebraska Republican Representative Don Bacon introduced a bill today that would give Congress authority to approve tariffs. In the Senate, 6 Republicans have signed on to a companion bill led by Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley and Commerce Committee Ranking Member Maria Cantwell. That bill has prompted a veto threat from the White House. Meanwhile, House Speaker Mike Johnson publicly is sticking by the tariff strategy. We'll hear from him coming up. Tariffs aren't the only issue dividing congressional Republicans, as the revised 2025 Republican budget resolution is scheduled to hit the floor this week. This is the same bill the Senate approved in the wee hours on Saturday morning, and that House Budget Committee Chair Jody Arrington called, quote, unserious and disappointing. At least 3 other Republicans have said they will oppose it on the House floor. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was at the White House today. It's his second visit since January. He said his country will eliminate the trade deficit with the U.S. and trade barriers, and that he hopes Israel can be a model for other countries to do the same. He also talked about the war with Hamas and the remaining hostages held by the terrorist group. And that's where we'll start. Here's President Trump from the Oval Office.
Reaction to the markets today, and would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals, and in certain cases they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals. As you know, I spoke this morning with the Prime Minister of Japan, and we had a very good conversation. They're coming. And I said, one thing, you're going to have to open up your country, because we sold no cars, like 0 cars in Japan, and they sold millions of cars into our country. They don't really take our agriculture, a little bit of it just to keep us slightly happy, but they don't take what they're supposed to be taking. So we have a great relationship with Japan. We're going to keep it that way, but they're coming in to meet, and other countries are coming in. With China, as you know, against my statement, they put a 34% tariff on above what their ridiculous tariffs were already. And I said, if that tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock, we're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade, and it shouldn't be that way. And I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China, but they can't do this. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it, because we have been just destroyed, what they've done to our system. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. And the reason is that people allowed it to get that way. So we'll be talking to China. We'll be talking to a lot of different countries. And I think, you know, if we can make a really fair deal and a good deal for the United States, not a good deal for others. This is America first. It's now America first. And we didn't put America first. We put America last. The people that were in the Oval Office put America last, and we're not going to stand for it.
He also talked about the status of the tariffs. Are they permanent, or is there room for countries to negotiate?
Well, they can both be true. There can be permanent tariffs, and there can also be negotiations, because there are things that we need beyond tariffs. We need open borders. You know, we almost had a deal with China where we're going to open up China. It was almost done. Some of you remember it during my first term, and it was very disappointing. We ended up making a great deal, $50 billion worth of product was sold, 50 billion. You'd like that in Israel. And I made that deal, but it wasn't the deal that I wanted. It was the deal that I wanted was that, plus they were going to open up China so that our companies could go into China and compete with other countries and China for the, for a large number of people. And at the very end, that deal was terminated, and we went to a piece of the deal. And so there are a lot of things outside of tariffs, but tariffs are very important. But there are a lot of things like opening up countries that were totally closed. China is essentially a closed country. In fact, it is a closed country. And what they do is they charge tariffs so that if you sell cars or if you sell anything, nobody's going to buy it because the price is out of control. But that's true with a lot of other countries also. So we're going to get fair deals and good deals with every country, and if we don't, we're going to have nothing to do with them. They're not going to be allowed to participate in the United States.
He was also asked about the European Union's response.
You said it
The EU has said that they have offered zero for zero tariffs on cars and industrial goods. Is that not enough?
Well, the EU, no, it's not. The EU has been very tough over the years. I always say it was formed to really do damage to the United States in trade. That's the reason it was formed. It was formed with all of the countries from Europe, I guess most of them, not all of them, but most of them. And they formed together to create a little bit of a monopoly situation, to create a unified force against the United States for trade. So they have NATO, which is largely the same countries, and they took advantage of us dollar-wise and militarily until I got there. You know, I was able to get $600 billion from NATO, where they paid NATO because most of these nations weren't even paying. We were paying for NATO, so we're paying them to guard them militarily, and they're screwing us on trade. So that's not a good combination. So now it's really turned around. It's the opposite, and the European Union's been very bad to us. They don't take our cars, like Japan in that sense. They don't take our agricultural product. They don't take anything practically. And yet they send millions of cars in a year, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BMWs. They're sending millions and millions of cars into the U.S., but we don't have a car that's been sold to the European Union or other places, but let's go for the European Union. And it's not going to be that way. It's got to be fair and reciprocal. It's got to be fair. It's not fair. We have a deficit with the European Union of $350 billion, and it's going to disappear fast. And one of the reasons and one of the ways that that can disappear easily and quickly is they're going to have to buy our energy from us because they need it. They're going to have to buy it from us. They can buy it. We can knock off $350 billion in 1 week. They have to buy and commit to buy a like amount of energy.
And he was asked about the Middle East, the war in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen.
Many of Palestinian Americans who voted for you and not for Biden because you've promised them to end the war in Gaza.
Very honored by that vote, too.
The war is still going on and there's no hostage deal. Do you have any update on that?
Well, I'd like to see the war stop, and I think the war will stop at some point that won't be in the too distant future. Right now we have a problem with hostages. We're trying to get the hostages out. We got quite a few of them out, but it's a long process. It shouldn't be that long. We have a big problem that we've done. I think I'll ask Pete to maybe talk about it for a second, because a lot of people are asking. The Houthis, we've been very tough and very successful militarily. We've really damaged them badly. These were people shooting down ships and other things, by the way, flying objects like airplanes. And we've put a major hurt on the Houthis, which nobody's been able to do. We've really hit them hard, and they know it, and they don't know what to do. And it's every night, night after night. And we've gotten many of their leaders and their experts. They're experts on missiles. I mean, they actually make missiles. Nobody thought that. But they make missiles. They're highly sophisticated, and they're very tough. But they've been very badly damaged. Nobody else was able to do that but us. Pete, you want to discuss that, please?
Yes, sir. It's been a bad 3 weeks for the Houthis, and it's about to get worse. It's been a devastating campaign, whether it's underground facilities, weapons manufacturing, bunkers, troops in the open, air defense assets. We are not going to relent, and it's only to get more unrelenting until the Houthis declare they will stop shooting at our ships. And we've been very clear at the Iranians as well. They should not continue to provide support to the Houthis, and that message has been made very clear. So we have a lot more options and a lot more pressure to apply, and we know, because we see the reports, how devastating this campaign has been in them, and we will not relent.
We have a great military. There's no military like our military. And despite Biden having given a lot, but nevertheless a pretty small piece, but it was a lot of our military away in Afghanistan, and one of the dumbest situations, I think, and maybe the most embarrassing situation we've ever been involved in, that short period of time in Afghanistan. What a disgrace that was, but left a lot of our military behind. Left. You see them in their annual parades where they're parading trucks that are armor plated and different things that they can't, but it's many billions of dollars we left behind. But despite that, we have a tremendous military. That was a very small portion because we rebuilt the military during my first term, and we have great things happening with our military. We also essentially approved a budget which is in the facility. You'll like to hear this, of $1 trillion, $1 trillion, and nobody's seen anything like it. We have to build our military, and we're very cost conscious, but the military is something that we have to build, and we have to be strong because you got a lot of bad forces out there now. So we're going to be approving a budget, and I'm proud to say, actually, the biggest one we've ever done for the military. We're cutting other things that were under Doge, but under a lot of other. When you look at a woman getting $2 billion for environmental, and it had nothing to do with environmental, and they had $100 in the bank, and they give her $2 billion. Many of those cases, all that stuff is going to be cut out. But we are getting a very, very powerful military. We have things under order now, the likes of which we've never had before. We've never had the kind of aircraft, the kind of missiles, anything that we have ordered. And it's in many ways too bad that we have to do it, because hopefully we're not going to have to use it. But the military is very, very powerful, and it's going to remain that way.
And we heard Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in there. Here's what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said about the conflict and the hostages still held by Hamas.
We spoke about not only the hostages, but about Gaza. The hostages obviously is a human story of just unbearable agony. I speak to the families. I spoke to them yesterday. Spoke to another one when I was in Hungary before I came here. I speak to them every day. They're in agony. The hostages are in agony, and we want to get them all out. Steve Witkoff was President Trump's very able representative, helped us get a deal that got 25 out. We're working now on another deal that we hope will succeed. And we're committed to getting all the hostages out, but also eliminating the evil tyranny of Hamas in Gaza, and enabling the people of Gaza to freely make a choice to go wherever they want. I mean, they should have that choice. And the president put forward a vision, a bold vision, which we discussed as well, including the countries that might be amenable and are amenable to accepting Palestinians of their free choice if they choose to go there. And I think that's the second thing that we discussed. But the hostages came right on top. We also discussed the situation in Syria. We've had neighborly relations with Turkey that have deteriorated, and we don't want to see Syria being used by anyone, including Turkey, as a base for attack in Israel. Turkey is a country that has a great relationship with the United States. The president has a relationship with the leader of Turkey. We discussed how we can avoid this conflict in a variety of ways, and I think we can't have a better interlocutor than the President of the United States for this purpose. And of course, we also discussed Iran. Look, we're both united in the goal that Iran does not ever get nuclear weapons. If it can be done diplomatically in a full way, the way it was done in Libya, I think that would be a good thing. But whatever happens, we have to make sure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons.
He also talked about working with President Trump on tariffs.
As you said, we had the opportunity to talk today about many subjects. First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the President a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. and we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same. I recognize the position of the United States. It says, you know, we're allowing other countries to put tariffs on us, but we don't put tariffs on them. And, you know, I'm a free trade champion, and free trade has to be fair trade. And I think that's basically the position that you have put forward, Mr. President. We are going to eliminate the tariffs, and rapidly. I had the opportunity to speak to Secretary Lutnick yesterday. We talked about how we could effect this quickly, and I hope to bring the solution very quickly. We're not talking about intentions. We're not talking about you know, just words. We're talking about results. And those results are going to come. That's the first.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you.
You can see all of today's event with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House, in the Oval Office, at cspan.org, and on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. Now to the Republican response to the White House tariffs. Here's what Speaker Johnson had to say earlier today at the Capitol.
Mr. Speaker, there's a push by some of your members to give Congress a say. Don Bacon has a bill to give Congress a say and review the tariffs. Why not give Congress the opportunity to have it be a check on the president on this
Congress
issue?
will weigh in on it, but with the president, with the administration in tandem, and I think you got to give the president the latitude, the runway to do what it is he was elected to do, and that is get this economy going again and get our trade properly balanced with other countries. So I think most of the American people understand the necessity of that. Listen, we had a $1.2 trillion trade deficit in 2024. I don't think that's fair to our country. I think the American people understand that, and I think they see a president who's engaging and trying to fix that. So we're going to give him the space necessary to do it, and we'll see how it all develops.
Don't you think Trump's administration officials should brief members? I mean, some of your members are asking for a briefing at the very least to understand the strategy.
His office is directly engaged with members, and we'll have.
Do you expect them to talk to the conference, sir?
Consequences for this?
And as we said, the Republican pushback is coming in the form of bipartisan legislation to reclaim congressional authority on tariffs. Mentioned Senator Grassley's bill and the White House veto threat on it. Speaker Johnson said he has no plans to put Representative Bacon's bill on the floor, but at least one Republican says he's interested, David Valadao of California.
It probably is. I need to take a little bit better look at it. I've already heard that the Speaker's not opposed to, or not supportive of it, obviously, but it is something that should be considered. I've always been someone who supports giving power back to the Congress, the way our founding fathers originally designed, and this is one of those powers that belongs in the Congress, and we should be looking at that in, I think, a very serious manner.
He spoke on News Nation yesterday morning, and while approval of these bills may be a long shot, Wall Street Journal congressional reporter Siobhan Hughes says Republicans splitting from the president is a big deal.
And it's not overt. Nobody is poking a direct finger in Donald Trump's eye, but it's unmistakably there. And we see it in a couple of different ways. Number one, we saw Chuck Grassley from deep red Iowa come out and unveil a bill that would basically say within 60 days, Congress has to approve any tariffs. And then you saw Don Bacon on the House side say he was going to introduce a companion measure. And so what that tells us is that some Republicans already want to put Trump on a leash and give him a time frame, give him 60 days. Beyond that, you are hearing some voices now step out and express concerns. We saw Ron Johnson in an interview with, I believe, a CBS reporter express some concerns. Ted Cruz from Texas, who has a very big voice because of a podcast he has, sort of said 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, but if this goes on for too long and there's a recession, that is a problem, and boy, is there going to be a backlash in the 2026 elections. And to put a fine point on this, you don't hear Republicans challenge the president that openly. And so when Republicans are out there making these arguments, that is a big deal.
Siobhan Hughes was on Washington Journal this morning. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries also talked to reporters about tariffs today.
Trump tariffs, which are a tax on the American people, are so reckless, so unstrategic, so lacking in any sophistication that the only conclusion that one can draw is that Donald Trump and Republicans are intentionally tanking the economy. Is it because, as Donald Trump has indicated, that during tough economic times, the rich get richer and it's a buying opportunity? Those are Trump's words. Can you confirm?
But what's your question?
I just asked it.
Representative Jeffries was also asked whether he supports Senator Grassley and Representative Bacon's efforts to reclaim congressional authority on tariffs.
Yes. At the end of the day, the Constitution is very clear that tariffs and tax policy, the ability to raise revenue, that authority is vested in the Congress for a reason, because the Congress is most closely associated, particularly the House, with the American people. And what we've witnessed under complete Republican control of government is a willingness to simply bend the knee to Donald Trump, no matter how much pain he is inflicting on the American people or how much damage Trump is doing to the American way of life. At the end of the day, House Democrats are going to continue to press our case because the American people are listening, paying close attention, and as special election after special election after special election have demonstrated since late January, responding. Republicans will either start acting like a separate and co-equal branch of government and work with Democrats in a bipartisan way to push back against Trump's failed economic policies, or continue to suffer the political consequences that have been visited upon them with record speed during the last several weeks.
House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. Tariffs were also on the mind of Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer.
Mr. President, make no mistake about it, Donald Trump is teeing up a nationwide recession. Less than a week after Donald Trump started the largest, dumbest trade war in American history, all the signs say America is heading towards calamity. A report by J.P. Morgan entitled, quote, "There Will Be Blood," warned these policies, if sustained, would likely push the United States and possibly the global economy into a recession this year. An update of our probability scenario tree makes this point, raising the risk of a recession this year to 60%. That's the conservative, cautious J.P. Morgan. 60% chance of recession. Barclays, meanwhile, said Donald Trump's tariffs will cause inflation to nearly double as America enters a recession. HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America all said the same thing. The tariffs have made a recession more likely. And now, today, Goldman Sachs are the ones saying danger. Some analysts say the damage is already done. $6 trillion of value have been wiped out. Any community in America that relies on trade or tourism or farming or energy or any wide range of industries is at risk of a recession. My state of New York, my city of New York, certainly are at that risk, heading right in that direction, unfortunately. Consumer activity is going to go down, demand is going to suffer, unemployment is going up. And maybe worst of all, Donald Trump's tariff tax is the largest tax hike since before the Vietnam War. Families will pay $5,000 extra a year for groceries and appliances, for drugs, for clothes, for cars, for gasoline, and so much more. Everywhere they look, Americans are going to see prices going up, going up. Donald Trump campaigned on the fact that it was too much inflation, and yet he is causing already a ton of it. So let me say it again. Donald Trump is teeing up a nationwide recession.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. And from Politico, quote, the rising economic pressure from tariffs is making it even more urgent for Republicans to show progress behind Trump's sweeping plans for tax cuts and other legislative priorities. House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Sunday, House Speaker Mike Johnson Sunday vowed to push through the budget plan that the Senate adopted last week, even as he faces a growing backlash from fiscal hawks in the House over what they see as insufficient spending cuts. In a private call with Republican lawmakers Sunday, Johnson cited the market upheaval as a reason the House needs to act and not try to revise the Senate plan. That from Politico today. Here's what Senate Republican leader John Thune said about it during his leader time remarks.
First, Madam President, we are here to ensure that hardworking Americans don't see their tax bills rise next year. In 2017, Republicans delivered tax relief to the American people, but that relief is expiring this year. And if we don't act, American families making less than $400,000 a year will see a $2.6 trillion tax hike next year. Tax rates will rise. The standard deduction will be cut almost in half, and the child tax credit will be cut in half. That, Madam President, is not acceptable. And so we're here to prevent tax hikes on American families and permanently extend the 2017 tax relief. Second, Madam President, we are here to address the remains of the Biden border crisis, bolster our military readiness, and unleash American energy production. After 4 years of chaos at our southern border under President Biden, President Trump has taken action to secure the border and take criminal illegal immigrants off America's streets. But the administration needs additional resources from Congress if this progress is going to continue. And we need a serious investment in our military to restore readiness and ensure that our men and women in uniform are equipped to deter and to defeat threats.
Senate Republican leader John Thune. And as we mentioned, House Budget Chair Jody Arrington has called the Senate bill, quote, unserious and disappointing. Other Republicans chimed in. Chip Roy of Texas posted on X on Saturday, quote, if the Senate's Jekyll and Hyde budget is put on the House floor, I will vote no. Failure is not an option, and the Senate's budget is a path to failure. House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris of Maryland posted soon after that, saying he, quote, can't support House passage of the Senate changes to our budget resolution until I see the actual spending and deficit reduction plans to enact President Trump's America First agenda. They join Representative Lloyd Smucker of Pennsylvania, who said, quote, certainly can't support it as written. He said that on Thursday evening. And even with Congress set to leave town for its Easter and Passover break on Thursday, Siobhan Hughes says this week in the House will be interesting.
This is as bumpy and rocky as it gets in the House. And you already started to see that yesterday at a conference call that House Speaker Mike Johnson put together. My Wall Street Journal colleague Olivia Beavers got inside of that, and there were a lot of concerns being expressed about the structure of this bill. And there are two different wings. Well, the loudest voices on that call were really the fiscal conservatives, who looked at what the Senate passed and said, wait a minute, we noticed that you are instructing the Senate committees to cut spending by $4 billion. That's a drop in the bucket.
A B.
Yeah, a B, not T, B. And we're not convinced that we can actually support this. There is another coalition of Republicans, and they've been a bit silent, but I would expect to hear from them by midweek, who are terribly concerned about what this means for the Medicaid program and cuts to the Medicaid program. Because buried inside this budget resolution is a number, $880 billion. That is how much the House Energy Committee is supposed to come up with in cuts. And guess what that committee oversees? Medicaid. And as Senator Susan Collins put it to us, the only way you can get to that level of cuts is if you go after Medicaid, and that was why she voted against the budget resolution over the weekend.
You can see all of our look ahead at the week in Congress with Wall Street Journal congressional reporter Siobhan Hughes at cspan.org and the C-SPAN Now mobile app. You're listening to Washington Today.
If you're listening closely to the language currently being used by leaders of the United States and Canada about each other, What a Republican president once said about the two countries might seem unfamiliar.
The American people know that putting up walls around our country is a prescription for ruin, not renewal. What the world and the United States need now is more trade and more open trade. And that's why we've pushed for a new GATT round that includes the most ambitious multilateral trade negotiation agenda in history. That's why we've negotiated an historic trade agreement with Canada that will expand jobs, growth, and opportunity on both sides of the border.
That was President Ronald Reagan, March 11th, 1988, speaking at the White House with business leaders. The topic, the recently signed United States-Canada Free Trade Agreement. Against the backdrop of the current state of U.S.-Canada relations, the latest episode of C-SPAN's podcast, The Weekly, looks back to the 1980s, when the tone was different and the policies even more different still. What did President Reagan say about Canada? What were his trade policies toward our northern neighbor? And what did President Reagan think about tariffs? Find out in The Weekly. Find C-SPAN's The Weekly wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back to Washington Today. The Supreme Court has temporarily halted a judge's order requiring the Trump administration to return by the end of the day today a Salvadoran man who the government has said was deported by mistake. Chief Justice John Roberts, acting on behalf of the court, paused the order given by U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes that the administration return Kilmar Abrego Garcia from an El Salvadoran prison by midnight tonight. That order came as a response to a lawsuit filed by Abrego Garcia's family challenging his deportation. From Reuters, writing on the decision, the stay, quote, gives the 9 justices additional time to consider the administration's more formal request to block the judge's order while litigation in the case continues. Reuters goes on to report, quote, Judge Zinnes found that the U.S. government had no lawful authority to detain and deport Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran migrant who lived in Maryland legally with a work permit. Now, last week, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that the Justice Department lawyer who argued the case has been put on administrative leave. From NBCnews.com, the government attorney, Erez Rivani, quote, expressed frustration at the hearing over not having the information the judge was seeking about the case. He also made it clear he wasn't getting much help from his superiors. Now, here's what Attorney General Bondi said about it yesterday on Fox News Sunday.
So it's a pending matter right now. He was put on administrative leave by Todd Blanche on Saturday, and I firmly said on day one, I issued a memo that you are to vigorously advocate on behalf of the United States. Our client in this matter was Homeland Security, is Homeland Security. He did not argue. He shouldn't have taken the case. He shouldn't have argued it if that's what he was going to do. He's on administrative leave now. But yes, you have to vigorously argue on behalf of your client. As lawyers, we know that. That would be a defense attorney walking in, conceding something in a criminal matter. That would never happen in this country. And so he's on administrative leave now, and we'll see what happens.
Finally today, congressional advisors and academic researchers talked about the future of Medicare, specifically Medicare Advantage, and how its rapid growth is affecting healthcare policy. They also talked about potential changes to the program and how the Trump administration and the new director of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, might look at reform. Here's Alyssa Polisi, former House Ways and Means Committee staffer on the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to tell which direction this administration will ultimately go, but I do think that the Dr. Oz nomination hearing gave a lot of really good insights into some of the abuses that they're looking to curb. Risk adjustment use through in-home HRAs, prior authorization. I think from a plan perspective, you have prior authorization being viewed as a waste, fraud, abuse tool. It's a blunt instrument, but has been useful overall for the program and for beneficiaries. And I think this administration is going to have to figure out how to thread the needle. But I think with Dr. Oz speaking very candidly about the reduction in services that should be that prior authorization should be applied to. Greater oversight is definitely one of those areas, and then the in-home HRAs, again preserving sort of like the the use of those in-home HRAs.
Say what an HRA is for.
The in-home, the in-home HRA risk, home
Health risk assessment.
Health risk assessment. Thank you. So those in-home HRAs are used though for care coordination, and I think what he put a very specific point on is the fact that those in-home HRAs, while important, should be used as a care connection tool. And I think that is something that they're likely to focus on.
Former House Ways and Means Committee staffer Alyssa Palisi. Now, according to Newsweek, Dr. Mehmet Oz has changed his position on the Medicare Advantage program. He promoted the program on his TV show and promised to expand it when he ran for Senate in Pennsylvania back in 2022. But at his confirmation hearings last month, he criticized the program and said he would, quote, go after Medicare Advantage if he's confirmed. That event happened at the American Enterprise Institute today. You can see all of that discussion at cspan.org and the free C-SPAN Now mobile app. That's also where you can find this program as a podcast. It's also on YouTube. Just search Washington Today. And for more on the stories that are shaping Washington every day, get our daily email word for word. Just go to cspan.org/connect to subscribe. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks a lot for listening today to Washington Today.
C-SPAN's Washington Journal, our live forum inviting you to discuss the latest issues in government, politics, and public policy, from Washington, D.C. to across the country. Coming up Tuesday morning, we'll talk with Ronna Epting, Executive Director of Move On, about the Democratic Party agenda and strategies to counter Republicans in the Trump administration. And then Family Research Council President Tony Perkins discusses the Trump administration's approach to family-related issues. C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Join the conversation live at 7 Eastern Tuesday morning on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, or online at cspan.org.